probably the best thing to do is to ask a couple of for you guys to ask questions, and then we can kind of sort of fill in the blanks of how we got to make the film. I think that's probably the best way to go. What do you think? Yeah? Okay, yeah, first question.
Where did the idea come from?
Okay, where did the idea come from? The idea came from, it was basically I was sort of thinking, what would you do if you had to kill a goldfish? I don't know exactly where the idea came from. To give it simply, that's probably about the 20th short film script that I've kind of written or developed or gotten to the point where it was kind of ready to do something with. And some of the others were okay, they were decent, but that was the one when I told people about the idea, they were like, oh, that's really good. There was a hook in it, and it started off with the ending rather than the beginning. So I had the idea of what would you do if you had to, would you hide a fish up your sleeve, or what would you do? How would you get out of that situation? And the idea then of having the bucket in the drain, spoiler alert, the bucket in the drain was that, would it work? And from that then I crafted the story around that, and that was about draft 8 of the script. Originally it was twice as long and had all sorts of other characters, and it came down and down and down and down. And even at that, Blaine reckons we still should have cut it a bit more for the final cut. But that, so I think the idea, and I was lucky enough in that film that I had the ending. And I noticed with a lot of my other scripts, if you have a lot of people have setups. Oh, 2 guys in an ice cream van and they find a dead dog. But that's great. But that's a great setup. But what's the story? Where's the hook? And where's the ending? And I found writing that's always much harder to find. So when I had this sort of ready to go and people were liking it, I said, okay, I think we'll take a gamble on this because people like the concept of it. And I think a short film is like telling a joke. It's like telling a story. If I was telling you a story of on the way here today I met somebody and such happened, if I lose your attention at any stage, I'm not telling the story very well. And I think all films should be like that, but particularly short films. So that's where the idea came from. It was maybe I was watching Derren Brown or something like that, and how would you do it? So yeah.
Was it a conscious choice to have the characters act in quite an adolescent way? It almost seems
yes.
like the way they act is like sort of 14, 15 years
old. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like the guys were all meant to be between 16, 17, 18. Now, we didn't use any underage actors because of there are certain restrictions with using anybody under 18. You can only use them for 4 hours at a time or things like this. So we made the call to use people who were around the 21, 22 mark and dressed them young and create the fictitious world. And then, if we sold it right, the audience would believe it. So a lot of that was done with costume and costume design. All the costumes were designed in advance by Anouk Sablé-Rolas, who's our costume designer. And they were colour coded as well. I don't know if any of you picked up on that, but there was a lot of things going on to try and re-emphasise the characters non-verbally, which of course you're always trying to do in filmmaking. So yeah, to get the tone of a film right is always difficult. And it's not a comedy, but there's comic elements to it, and it's not played seriously. Like there's nobody stamping in anybody's head or anything like this. It's a light touch sort of drama, even though when you tell people what it's about, a guy has to kill his pet goldfish. It sounds quite dark, but I deliberately didn't want to do that, and the costume and the everything about the camera design kind of fed into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic coming of age story as well. Really, I mean, of course, the hook is based around the goldfish bowl and everything, but the reason I think so many people like it, and probably one of the main reasons that it would have got into the likes of Galway, I think, or accepted onto RT, was its universal appeal. Like that. It's a story that anyone can relate to because it's somebody who's the typical awkward teenager moving into a new area. And that's kind of. I think the main appealing part of it, like the hook is kind of what sells it in a sentence, but when you watch it, that's not the real reason that you like it, I think.
Hopefully. Unless you're into torturing goldfish.
How long did it take to shoot?
That's a good question. We did 4 days of principal photography, and then there was another half day, or probably another 2 half days of pickup footage, which were done a couple of months later when we looked at the edit and we realised that we need a cutaway of the goldfish, we need a cutaway of the drain, we need a cutaway of hands, that sort of thing, you know. A lot of it, if you actually saw when it was shot, was completely out of sequence. We shot it,
Yeah.
you know. So it's a real testament to our editor, David O'Reilly, for putting it together, and our colorist, Aidan Gibson, for balancing the shots to give the illusion that everything is running in real time. But 4 days of principal photography, and that was kind of in the pre-planning stage. We realised, and maybe we could talk about the scheduling. I'll start it and Blaine can finish it. The first day of the shooting was all the internal scenes.
Interior.
I am a filmmaker. All the interior scenes, and the reason was we did it all in a house in Blackrock in Dublin, and the crew didn't know each other. And if you get a group of people together, you always need the first day to shake it out, to get people a little bit familiar with working. And doing that on a street where traffic is passing by and the weather can change is not the easiest place to do it. So we decided to do that. That was probably the easiest shoot to do, and that was the kitchen scene. That was the first night. And it took us a long time to actually get that scene, even though it's quite short. But we needed that so that when we went the next 2 days, day 2 and day 3, were all the exteriors. And the day 2 on the exteriors, we realised pretty quickly that we had planned to do, I don't know, say 20 shots or 20 setups, and we got through about 12. So we were well behind by the time we came into day 3, and we had a bit of a council of war meeting that night in my house, and we worked out how we were going to get through day 3 of shooting, and we kind of shortened down a lot of things. We used a lot more handheld camera design than we were originally going to use, which worked out better, I think. Kind of chucked out, can we cover this from that and that? Right, okay, so we don't need this. Okay, can we move the schedule around so that the main guy, the baddie, Darren, he has to get away at 4 o'clock, whereas we have another 2 hours with the other guys. So we kind of had this sort of, Blaine, the first AD, Gavin, Duffy and myself, we sat down and we kind of came up with a new plan for day 3. And then day 4 was the car scenes. Was it all the car scenes?
It's 2 years ago, and I have no
No.
idea.
It was. I think it was all the car scenes, which were at the very beginning, where the car's driving around and that sort of thing.
You shot it 2 years ago?
Literally 2 years to the day that it was broadcast, it was shot. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So it's the 6th of March to the 9th of March,
That's strange.
2014. So,
What did you shoot it on mainly?
C300 mostly. We were actually talking about this earlier. We were trying to remember, was it a 7D or a 5D, but I Canon DSLR anyway on the window, on the windscreen for the interior car stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe for a couple of other shots, but mostly C300 with Samyang lenses, which were kind of, because we were, I mean, they're really nice lenses. I own a pair now, thank God. They're really nice, but they're kind of budget, if you like. When you're renting gear, they're like the cheapest ones you can get.
What was the overall budget, if you can?
yeah, sure. At the moment, and I have to, in and around, I've spent about €8,000 on the film, and I'll explain why. I could have shaved 3,000 off that, maybe 4,000 if I didn't pay anybody. But I made a point that everybody would get at least expenses if you were an actor and showreel, and if you were crew, the rate I gave was €50 a day. So not union rates, but it was a conscious decision, and I funded this film pretty much out of my own pocket. My parents did give $2,000 towards it, to be honest, but only after they saw how far I'd gone with it, and it was I was going to pay that anyway, and they just stepped in and said, let us give you something. So it wasn't part of my business plan. And the reason I did do this was I got a lot of back money. I do a lot of contract work, and with one particular guy, you get paid every 6 months. So at the time, the start of the year 2014, a lot of money came into the account, and before it could all go back out of the account again, I decided to mobilise the troops. And I had the script. I knew the money was probably coming, and then we had enough to get us through production. And that would explain why it took 2 years to get it to where it is now. It was stop-start in terms of then I'd have enough money for the colour grading, enough money for the sound design and so forth. Also as well, I wanted to learn by doing with the project. So I've learned colour grading, I've learned sound design, I've learned how to build websites, I've learned more about graphic design. I learned a lot about visual effects because we had about 15 shots that needed to be fixed, that there was booms in them. You know what reflections are like? Well, filming a goldfish bowl gives you lots of reflections everywhere, and there's camera crews and booms, and so I learned a lot about mocha tracking and After Effects and all that sort of business, which was great, and that was the whole point of doing it. Of course, I could have gotten someone to do it and paid them, but as much as possible, I tried to learn. I'm not an expert in any of these things by any means, but the fact that I now can use After Effects as Blaine said, with multimedia, it doesn't teach you everything, but it teaches you enough to go and learn something. And that's literally what I wanted to do. And of course, that's more the post-production side of thing. So at the moment it's $8,000, and that includes festival submissions. I don't have a full breakdown of the budget, but yeah, you could have half that.
How much was production, say?
Production was probably about four and a
So
half to
half.
5, and then it's
Gives you a good idea what's involved in post. I mean, you go into a project and you might expect. I know myself when I was in college, we were doing films where there was no, VFX, and there was no, you were using royalty-free music and whatever. There was basically no post-production costs because you were doing the editing yourself and stuff. But once you kind of want to make something that is going to be successful, say in the festival circuit, you have to take it seriously in terms of how well polished it is. So you'll always have to spend money, particularly on sound mixing, and on decent grade, and on if you need anything fixed with VFX, it's always expensive.
to give you an idea on the sound, because I'm a musician and I worked as a sound engineer, and I'll tell you the three biggest problems with short films are sound, bad acting, which is actually a result of bad directing. And I mean by directing actors, as in just say the line, no, look more scared. And that's not how you direct, that's how people think you direct. It's not. You sit there, and I have a couple of notes here about what each character, I thought about them and developed them and give them backstories. And we never actually had any full-scale rehearsals with the crew. I know I've kind of gone off and I've answered my own question here, but I'm just explaining how the money can add up, because to get the actors together, it's coffee and buns and tea in Costa in the city centre, and you have to do that maybe 3 or 4 times, and maybe you're calling people and you're emailing people. Like this film is literally, I just see 800 emails. That's pretty much what went into this film, and God knows how many phone calls. It's a lot of time and investment, and if I was doing it again, I'd much rather have people on board and funding, so it wouldn't take as long, because when you, as Blaine said, when you have a life outside it, you can only really put your life on hold for so many years doing a project like this, I think, unless you're completely
and you'll
on the
only
spectrum.
because it takes so much time and I suppose emotional and psychological investment, that you're going to end up not doing many of those projects where you put your heart and soul into it, and unless of course it's like, you know, paid gigs. But if you're doing your own project like you did for however long, and I had a similar experience with other projects, so I know what it's like. And Alan said he was good enough to pay people, and I commend him for that, because you know, I did a couple of projects where I didn't pay people, and it really wasn't like the level of professionalism, like obviously goes up a lot when you're paying people, and 50 quid a day is not much. It's on you know, usual film rates, it's nothing. It's below what's allowed, let's say. But having said that, we were all friends of Alan. We would have done it for free anyway, you know, because we had all got projects that were we all did similar things and asked for favours ourselves, and would have loved to owe Alan a favour, or to have Alan owe us a favour even. So, you know, like the point is that it counts for a lot when you're willing to do that, because it means you have you know, faith in the project itself is going to take legs. So that's, you know, worth investing in.
It's very simple. A lot of people look for money for their projects, and it says a lot when you've invested your own money already. And subconsciously people go, well, this person's invested their own money. And if you've heard the maxim, show, don't tell, when you're writing or if you're making something, it's very true. A lot of people will judge what you do from what they see, not what you say or stand up or post on Twitter, although that's important too. But they're not going to believe you because you're just promoting yourself. But when word kind of goes around that that was a good crew, that was a good film, and everybody got fed well, everybody was looked after, nobody got too cold or too hot, nobody lost a head, which, to be fair, not a lot of short independent films can say that. Some can, but there are horror stories out there of people turning up not being fed or having water to drink and stuff, and it happens a lot more than you think. Toilet facilities, it's real simple stuff, but you know, so you just have to treat people well, and then of course if you have to shout at them and you're paying them, it's a bit easier. So luckily I don't think anybody was really shouted at, but sometimes if you have to tell somebody to get on with it, you're not crossing the line of goodwill if everyone's getting a few quid. And it brought the level of professionalism right up. And yeah.
And we had a full crew from camera department anyway. We had focus puller and second assistant, who were both really good guys, and it was a dream to have a let's call it a full crew, compared to maybe one camera assistant or no camera assistant doing like independent shorts. Like, I suppose technically the film could have been done without that, but it would have been, like, schedule wise and logistically and creatively as well, it would have been such a nightmare trying to do that. So we made smart moves, I think, in terms of where we put the limited resources that we had at our disposal, and that's what getting a for-sure film off the ground is all about.
I'll try and answer your question as best as I can in numbers. I'd say that hiring of equipment was probably $2,000 to $2,500 grand. We went to film equipment hire in Dundalk, and we got a few microphones from Film Base that he didn't have in stock at the time. We had 2 guys in sound department that were great for on location sound, one to boom up and one to record, which is really luxury for a short film. Usually it's one guy doing this, but it really made the difference. And then I got the sound mixed by Colin McKenna, who does post-production sound. He's a real high-end guy, and he couldn't believe that I turned up with such good audio. But that's because we had great mics. We had a 8-track Tascam hard disk recorder with great preamps, and as well as that, we scheduled for sound. And you said as well that you hadn't been in a short that literally where we said, right, everyone quiet for 2 minutes, or can we do that again? Because it's not just about capturing the camera. Sorry, Blaine. It's about capturing the audio as well.
No, any cinematographer who knows what he's talking about will always say that sound is more important, and it is, because you will get away with certain things on camera that you won't get away with in sound. Like, people won't forgive you. The audience it'll look so much more amateur if it sounds terrible compared to if it looks terrible. And like, I have no illusions about that.
Okay.
But it's good. Like, with Alan's previous experience as a musician and stuff, he had an appreciation for the importance of sound that isn't always there with a director. Usually directors will just kind of not think about it too much, and unless they've got a really vocal sound recorder, so he'll always kind of put the foot down and say, no, we need that again. Loads of things that we skipped over, and then that, in the end of the day, it just means more pain in post trying to do ADR and pickups and all the rest. So it's better off to just get it at the time.
So I'd say about 2.5 in equipment, about 500 in catering, probably another 500 in transport. So already, what are you up to, 3.5? And then paying everybody €50 a day with a crew of 15. What's that? We'd about 12. Well, only about.
We already talked about my failure of maths.
I'd say it cost about 600 a day, about 500 a day, give or take. Only not everybody was getting paid, like I wasn't, and my girlfriend wasn't, and things like that. She was the stills photographer. And very good point is to document what you do on set with stills. It's really important. So yeah, I'd say about 12 people roughly were getting paid €50 a day. So that's what, 600 times 4. So there's 2.5 grand. And that's not counting the guys getting paid to do the sound posts. So probably another grand, 1,500 on top of that. So if I asked everybody to work for free, there's 4 grand. You could just shave off the budget.
But the film probably would have never got made.
Probably wouldn't have got made. It probably would have, but it
probably
wouldn't
would
be
have,
as
but it
good.
would never got into Galway or broadcast on RTE.
That's possible, But you can see the difference of people sort of doing stuff. And when things run on and the guy doing sound has to do the 5th mix because something else has changed, you'll burn through goodwill very quickly. And I know for a fact you'll be asked to do projects for free, and you'll end up doing some. But if somebody comes to you and they've got one thing to do and they're gone again, it's fine. But when they keep coming back like a bad boomerang, asking you to do changes and you're not getting paid for it, subconsciously in the back of your head, you're going to be like, not in a big hurry to work with them again. So yeah.
Did you try avail funding?
No. And I'll tell you why, because I am at the minute, and I had done beforehand for other projects. For this particular project, I didn't, because it wouldn't have got made in the time frame. Because to apply for funding, there's certain things, bits of funding come out. There's Film Base, there's the Film Board. As well as that, there's great competition for funding. And, you might not get funded. So if you're putting all your eggs in the basket of getting funding and you don't get funded, which 95% of applications don't, you're not going to make your film. 2 other reasons as well. In the back of my head, I was thinking, well, I haven't really shot a film that I can point to and say I've made this. And the first thing they look for when you're going for funding is, what have you done? And I done a couple of music videos, a couple of sort of 48-hour film challenges, which is, to be honest, enough to get you funding. If your idea is good enough, it is enough. But I just felt I want to go in looking for funding with a really strong, something that I can point to and say, this is what I did. And as well as that, when you take funding, you lose a bit of control. If you're doing a film board funded film, they will stand over you a little bit more and say, you know, we want you to use our DP, or we want you to use our production manager, or our... And film board films, as great as they are, and they are, you can always, they're always flawless technically and creatively, but they do have a certain beat to them, which you would lose if you weren't doing it. Now, if they had stepped in and offered me funding, I would have taken the hand off them. Absolutely, I wouldn't have not.
I think what Alan's touching on, and I've much less experience with this than he would, but in terms of the time and effort and everything that it takes to go into applying for funding, like, it really is almost in itself a full-time job. Like, it's just arduous, which is one of the reasons I don't do it. But having said that, like, you know, someone has to do it, and usually with a short film it'll rely on the one person who's trying to get it off the ground. So, you know, it's a good thing for everybody that Alan just went and did it himself anyway. And it's paid off, like, I hope, in the form of getting into Galway, which is a big victory for any short film in Ireland, and for being broadcast on RTE. Like, you really couldn't do a whole, like, bar getting into major international festivals, you couldn't do much better than that with a short film. So thankfully it's paid off. But I know lots and lots of projects, and I've worked on lots and lots of projects where, you know, more money went into them and they didn't go anywhere. So, you know, it's a lot of it's luck, but a lot of it as well is just down to the core idea and executing it well with the limited resources you have, you know.
I'd just say on the film festivals, probably the most disappointing part of the project was applying to film festivals. The first film festival we applied to was Galway, and we got in. That was a big achievement. The next 25 film festivals we applied to, we didn't get into. I'd say probably closer to 20. We probably got into two or three of them. We had a lot of knockbacks for other film festivals around the country and then globally. And I literally stopped applying to film festivals not so long ago because it costs money. It's expensive. It's a film festival application can be anything from €10 to €80 or €90 for the likes of Raindance. So I've probably €500 spent on film festival applications, and I didn't get into 90% of them.
Is that just that's just to filter out people that have made very, very low budget stuff to people who are...
It's just to make money.
It's to make money.
Yeah.
It's to make money. The economics of how film festivals work is they make all their money from film applications, most of it. So, and they charge people a lot of money. And the more prestigious your festival, the more people will apply, and the more you can charge. So, if you want to make money in the independent film world, set up a film festival. There's people that do it, and I won't name any because I'm on camera, but there are ones that do it in Ireland, and they will literally have 500 applications at €15 a pop, and they'll show 20 films.
That's why there's a proliferation of these little independent film festivals everywhere. Like, there's the bloody... I don't even know if there's one. There's probably a Navan Film Festival.
Hail Mary Film Festival.
You know, it's because of that. There's two reasons. First of all, everybody is making films these days. There's so many people doing it that there's just a proliferation of people who want to get their films seen. And number two, there's just these people who are taking advantage of that by setting up these film festivals. The thing is, like, unless it's going to be a film festival that is genuinely going to mean something to other people in the industry, and I mean people in the industry, not like, you know, your mother and father, then, like, there's really no point. All you're doing is clapping yourself in the back, because, like, no one else is going to care.
Until some sort of body puts in legislation, like the Irish Film Board or something like that, to say there's only a certain amount of film.
I think what's more likely to fix the problem is people will cop on to what's going on. I think at the moment most people don't realise, and I'm kind of happy we're here to tell you that before you go out and do it, because I wish someone had told me.
Or me.
Yeah, so you know, that's one of the misconceptions that's common. They're just, like, really, if I was to, I don't think I probably would, well, I would do a short if I really thought it was something really creatively interesting, but it would be purely for creative reasons I would do a short now. I've done a few, and for sure you have to do a few, but once you've done a few that are, like, reasonably successful on a festival circuit, you're not really going to gain much from doing another one, you know, unless you're obviously getting well paid, but that's a different thing altogether. There's no other reason for you to do it. It's not going to advance your career, like.
There was a bit of a glass ceiling with short films as well, unfortunately. Yeah.
So what are your plans for after doing that short? Are you going to do more shorts, or
I'll answer for myself first, and then maybe I'll let Blaine answer. Or yeah, I will do that. So it's a very good question. I don't have a solid answer for you. I'm currently applying for funding. I've with 3 or 4 applications. I've gone into the film board in the last year, not all successful. Like applying for script development funds. I applied for all the the After 16, which was the film board funded ones last year. Applying for funding is a full-time job, and it's pretty monotonous. But you know, if you keep throwing enough rocks, eventually you'll get somewhere. But at the moment, I've actually not gotten any funding at the moment for anything I've done. Now I haven't applied very much. So I hope to get funding, because when you get money for something, things go a lot quicker. I did do one project for Universal Music. Have any of you ever heard of Brendan McCahey? He won the Voice of Ireland 2 years ago. Okay, no big voice watchers. But he did very well, and I'd worked with Brendan over the years making videos, and straight away he goes, Alan, I want you to make my video, because the guys in Universal want to make it one way, and I want to make it my way. And I know, you know, we can work together. And there was a budget for that, like a nice budget, probably something comparable to this. And in 2 weeks we had it done and dusted and looking really good. And Blaine worked on that, and we had an Ori and Mira, and we had the top windmill lane, colour grading. When you've money in the bank, things get done very quickly. So yes, I'd like to get funding. And would I take on a feature? If somebody asked me to do it, of course I would, yeah. Would they ask me? Well, Gerard Cleary just won an Oscar for his short, so I'd say they'd be tapping his door first.
I mean, for me, I do a lot of, like, I'm not really in a position where I'm trying to get my own projects off the ground. Like, as a freelancer DOP, you're waiting for somebody to come ringing you to hire you for a job, and you don't really, I suppose you get to choose what you do a little bit less, because you either get offered something, you either like it or you don't, or you like the terms or you don't, you know. So for me, I mean, I'll continue doing whatever people want to pay me to do for a start. So that's a lot of like bull corporate stuff that's, you know, it's really boring or whatever, but it pays, and that kind of thing. And then the passion projects where you might do for directors that you have worked with all the way up, like Alan and a few other people that I've shot a lot of stuff with before. It's fun to continue on the journey with them. But in general, like, I wouldn't be too interested in doing shorts for the sake of, you know, like experience and for your portfolio and all that kind of stuff, you know. Because I have a portfolio now and I have no interest in building it upon, unless, like, you know, it's a project that's going to actually do, you know, either I'm going to get paid from it, or there's a very straightforward, sure way that's going to benefit me otherwise, you know. So, you know, in terms of career progression. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, for sure, my biggest aim at the moment is to get a feature under my belt. I haven't shot a feature yet. And I know I'm friends with lots of DOPs, and many of them have done features, and it just sounds like all the bad and good things, you know, about filmmaking into one big mad adventure. So, you know, it's some experience I definitely want to do and do soon, hopefully this year. But I'm still waiting for the project to come along, you know. That's the thing about, you know, being a, say, head of department as opposed to being a director or producer. You're not like trying to get your own thing off the ground. You're waiting for the one to come along to you, you know.
It's pros and cons. Sorry.
And then in relation to you just touched on corporate stuff. What kind of corporate stuff are you doing in terms of the men?
Well, I do a lot of training video stuff. Not so much shooting it, but I run a company that trains staff periodically in a particular area. I'm not going to go into it because it's not that it's confidential or anything, but it's just that I'm just not going to go into it. But anyway, it's nothing exciting. It's basically just a certain sector, and I trained a company that myself and another guy train people online, but it's not like really a film job. It's more we shot it like years ago using the same video over and over again, training new people. So that's like an example of a corporate project that's not kind of blurs the line of whether it's filmmaking or not, you know. Sure, we shot a video and it is video training, but it's really a kind of an administration technical role at the moment. But in terms of other corporate gigs, like I do a lot of like corporate videos. What did I do recently? I worked with a company in London. I lived and worked in London for 2 years. I was back last September, and worked with a company called Ecstasy that do like kind of high-end corporate videos. So they're kind of like adverts, really. They're commercials, but they're not technically commercials because they're not shot for broadcast. So they'd be like high-end high-end online videos basically for big brands like Verifone and like Vodafone is another one, and loads of other big brands.
So lucrative enough for them?
For who?
For the company XTC.
Yeah, I'm sure they get well paid, yeah. I mean, for me, I worked a lot of them as a camera assistant. I do a lot of camera assisting because it's good for anyone who wants to do cinematography to do a lot of that. I mean, it pays well as well for those kind of gigs because they get big budgets from the big brands, you know. Shot one in Iceland last year for Allegro, which is a big kind of oil logistics company. Like, I never heard of them before, but they're a massive company. And you know, they just peg money at something, and literally I think the video was for a product launch internally, like it was for some conference that they wanted to show off something to the company, to like, so it was completely internal, no one outside the company even seen it, and it was like, I don't know what the budget was, but it's something in the region of 50 grand, I'd say, you know. So that'll give you an idea of kind of what work is out there, but it's kind of, yeah, it's how you get in. But anyway,
Does anybody follow football? It's all soccer, no? I won't use that analogy then. I do a lot of corporate work as well, and most of it is internal and will never see the light of day. It's at the moment I'm working with a pharmaceutical company, which I won't name, and basically I've been drafted in to be to upskill, to basically bring a lot of skills to their communications department, and their communications department is one guy who is already doing 3 jobs. So and this is where your multimedia training will really, really come into use, and especially at the moment, very, very topical. Companies, and if you've ever been inside a big corporate company, they have a strange way of doing things, and if you're going to work in there, you kind of need to zone in with it. And if they will throw budgets at things that are crazy, and it's where you'll really learn your craft and really get good at stuff. So they might say, you know, the boss might see an ad that for Lucozade, and he loves fire going across the sky. Now the boss has no aesthetic training or technical training or whatsoever, but he wants that, and he has the keys to the purse. And basically he'll turn around to his guy who doesn't give a monkey's about what his boss wants except keeping his boss happy, and goes, right, we need to get that. And he'll turn around to somebody else and they'll say, draft in a guy. And the person will go on to LinkedIn or a recruitment agency, and they will just look for somebody that has a certain set of skills. They'll bring them in, they'll give them a brief, and 4 weeks later he'll have the video of the guy going, the fire going across the sky. And that's, the video will probably look awful. It'll probably be something you'd never want to put in your show reel. And it's, or else at worst, at best, it's talking heads inside the company who think they're funny, hilarious, and charismatic, and they're usually not. I won't name any more companies I've worked with in case this goes out. But that is kind of what I've discovered in the last 5 years of working camera, editing, production for various corporate world, and it is what it is. It's quite well paid. It's good. It's interesting, and they are really looking for people with diverse skills. More and more now. They want someone that can come in. I turned up to a project in January to make a video, and in the second hour they said, "Can you design a poster? It needs to be A0 and it needs to go out tomorrow and to the printers." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." But just to reiterate, my first thing is video making. But yeah, they want someone that'll sit there on the chair and say, "Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that."
It's interesting though, and not to at all say you're wrong, right? Because obviously it's different experience from different places. But I haven't really seen that. But in my world, like it's 2 different types of corporate gigs. Like there's ones, the kind of more high end ones I mentioned, where you're kind of drafted into a very specific job, either camera assisting or shooting, and you're not involved in any other part of the process. Or you're doing like a small scale like promo video for a local company or something. Like I do a little bit of that because it's some easy money usually. It's easy money once you've got the equipment to do it. So like I have my own camera, my own edit suite and stuff. So to make that kind of pay for itself, if it's quiet, I'll actually approach a few people I know who I think might benefit from a promo video. And usually it get off the ground. It'll just be a few £100 like for a couple of days work, but it literally will take a day and a half or a day. So it's easy money if you know how to tap into that market, because nowadays everybody video is so, it's just everywhere. Like every small company needs to have a video on their Facebook page and stuff. If they don't, not everyone has to have it, but it'll definitely help. But it's not very easy to kind of gauge exactly how much it will help. You can't say it translates to X amount of directly to X amount of business. So in that way, it's kind of an easy sell because everybody knows that it's needed and it's current, but nobody really knows how to gauge if it's been successful or not once it's out.
There's some figures that were released by a company called Wistia. You ever heard of Wistia?
I've heard of Wistia, yes.
Wistia, so they correlate like video views with kind of return on investment for sales.
Okay.
And like the figures are great, like for selling corporate video.
ROI, that's the big marketing.
ROI,
The marketing people speak in acronyms all the time.
What does that mean? What is that? Return on investment. Okay, right.
See,
There you
you're
go.
in college now, Blaine.
Yeah.
Those Wistia statistics that were put out are just like
Yeah.
amazing.
And just to kind of bring it back to what we're talking about filmmaking here, in case you think we're complete corporate sellouts and we love it. Blaine said something very interesting to me before, a story about Die Hard 5, working in Die Hard 5, and you said about the director, John Moore.
Yeah.
I should know his name, he's from my town. John Moore, as you said, directing is really all about communicating. And I know this is we want communicators, it's almost a cliche. But in any job you do, and this is why corporate stuff can be really good, if you do want to go into filmmaking, if you get funding or if you get a producer or private or public funding, you still have to deal with people that are going to come in suits and not understand really fully what you're doing, and you have to justify what you're doing. Any project I'm sure you do here in DCU, you have to write about what it is going to be and defend it to some extent. And it's a really good training, and it's something that I definitely took away from DCU. So, but back to the John Moore story, as Blaine said, John Moore, an actor, he could walk up to an actor and he could communicate to the actor what he needs. He could walk up to the camera technical people and speak their language. And when the producers came in with all the where's my money going, I want this, he could turn around and talk to them. And there are 3 different hats to wear at different times. And that, as you said, that could be almost in the space of a sentence, that hat could change. And that is going to happen in your kind of world. And in any project that you're drafted into, it's really important to find out who's paying for it and who has the final say and who has the final cut. Like this particular project, it was me. So that was great. But that's not really going to be the case, even if I get funding in the next thing. There's always going to have to be some sort of, you have to explain what you're doing.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing as well,
No.
because, usually film is a collaborative process, and usually the best result will come out of that collaboration. So, but generally the best people, because there's always exceptions, the best people to make a call on whether something should or shouldn't be done are producers, is what they do every day, so they're better at it, and there's the best people that will be able to lead everybody together towards the one vision are directors, because it's what they do every day and they're good at it. So there's kind of a natural ecosystem at play, where people who are actually good at what they do have found their niche and they're focused on it. And that's what I'd encourage any of you to do, if you haven't done already, is start to focus on at least an area, at least a department that you're interested in, whether it be art department, whether it be camera, whether it be sound, whatever. There's nothing worse than people call themselves filmmakers. You won't get any work because there's just too many people out there doing it, and there's too many people out there calling themselves cinematographers too. But at least you can kind of call yourself a cinematographer, and you have to be able to show that you can do it. So if you've got a portfolio to back it up, then people might take you seriously. I'm still trying to be taken seriously, so that takes a while. But the important thing is to focus on something. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to only do that, but it means that you do need to promote yourself as only that, Because in my experience, and I've done it all, I've tried to be a filmmaker, and I've tried to be a director, and I've tried to be, a video production professional. Like, what does that even mean, It meant doing the kind of promo videos I was talking about, where I wrote, shot, directed, and edited, and whatever. It was true to what I was, but at the same time, I wasn't selling myself to anybody in the industry, because nobody in the industry takes those kind of terms seriously, because everybody is very specialised. Now, I'm talking about kind of, if you want to do those kind of corporate, those low-level corporate promo video stuff, then that's fine. Like that is what you're supposed to do. But like, if you want to work in film, like real film, where there's actual budgets, where there's real creative stuff being made, then if that's the end game, start promoting yourself as a professional who working in a certain area.
Yeah, it is very true, and it's a big problem at the moment, because if you don't label yourself as something, nobody really knows what to go for. But it's all about who do you want reading that label. The marketing guy that hired me for this corporate job I'm on at the moment, he couldn't find anybody that was like all singing, all dancing, can do everything. And I told him, everybody I know that makes independent film has them skills, because they have to do all these things. but they're probably calling themselves a director or a writer or a DP, because they don't really want to be doing the corporate stuff. They want the film board to come and knock on their door, or they want a producer to ring them up. And it is really hard. And like sometimes you just need 2 different websites. And I'm not saying use a stage name, but sometimes you almost need...
I literally have that. I have Blaine Rennicks AC.com, which is my camera assistant website, and Blaine Rennicks DOP.com, which is the one I more regularly push out there, because if I were to say I'm also a camera assistant on my DOP website, I mean, I say it in the last line of the description or about me section where it's in small print, and if they've already read that far, I hope that it doesn't matter. But, you know, it's not like front and centre, because I had loads of discussions with people about which is best, and most guys I know who are start-out DOPs are working as an AC. So, you know, it's actually much more truthful for most people to say they do both, but nobody does, because it just doesn't look good, because people will say, if they don't know you, they'll look and say, well, he's doing both, he must not be good at either, you know. And I know from experience, and Alan knows as well, that when you do a multimedia degree, you're automatically thinking that my biggest asset is that I can do a little bit of everything. And probably in the tech world and in the web world, in graphic design and all those things, that is a big asset, but in film it's not. In film that's a bad thing to say. So if you're serious about getting into the film industry, even if you can do everything, it's not worth trying to say, because no one will believe you, you know.
Yeah, and although oddly enough, when you get there, they'll be very grateful that you can do everything, and they'll want to keep you around. But you know,
but you won't get there if you say.
You won't get there. That's the paradox.
What are your thoughts on creative agencies?
Well, I mean, in what sense? I mean, in terms of working for or working with, or.
Both. Like.
Well, personally, like I like as a DOP, one of the main aims, I said earlier, I want to shoot a feature, but like more long term, probably about 3 or 4 years from now, what I really want is to get into an agency. But that's more an agency that's kind of like a very specific cinematography agency that people will go, like corporate clients or commercial clients, you know, whoever's shooting the new Audi commercial will want a DOP. They'll go to an agency. They don't go looking for DOPs. They'll go for whatever DOP is hot at the time, has done like 5 or 6 car commercials already. So, you know, that's a big thing. But in terms of like creative agencies, say, hired to spearhead a campaign, say, like I mean, my experience, like I work as a freelancer, so if an agency were to take me on, it'll be for a set period of time for a project, to shoot a project, the same way as I'd be hired to shoot a short film. So I don't discriminate, as you know, in terms of what it's like to work for them. I wouldn't take a full-time job in one because I don't want a full-time job anywhere. So that suits some people and it doesn't suit others, you know. And there's not really many. There wouldn't be any full-time cinematographers in any creative agencies because they don't shoot every day. Like, you know.
I'll just weigh in there on mine. I've never really worked with too many creative agencies. I have some friends out of multimedia and communications, and I see them now, and they work in creative agencies, and it looks like a party going on there in the Docklands with like, you know, some sort of electric picnic on tour sort of thing. It looks like a great place to work. Yeah. What they do there, I don't know, and who they do it for, I honestly couldn't say. But like Blaine, I would like to get work as a director, because if they do get a project, they will say, we need to film something. Who's hot right now? And hopefully, with this being an RTE and social media, and I have another music video coming out next month with a girl, hopefully you're just on their radar, and they say, that chap, he's done that, that's good. Yeah. And again, it's like, who's hiring you? Who are you trying to sell yourself to? As in having an agent, which is slightly different, is I think at some point you do, you know, to really get booked for lots of work, even as a DOP or as crew, you usually have some sort of representation, wouldn't you, to some extent?
Well, I know in London, like I say, I know a lot of DOPs, like most DOPs I would have shot with as an AC, so that's a great way. You know, if you're working as a camera assistant, obviously it's a great way to learn in terms of being on set and seeing how different DOPs work, but also just to get to know DOPs and hang out with them, go for a beer with them the weekend and stuff. And I know the number one aim for all of them that I know in London would be getting into an agency. It's like the thing to do, because no longer do you have to like comb all the websites applying for jobs that most likely you're never going to get, because, you know, most people hire people they know. So it's kind of that breaking the cycle of like, you know, just trying to get yourself out there. The best way to do it is in an agency, but there's no point in even applying to, I applied to loads of agencies, but I was never going to get in hindsight, because like you have to have like met all the criteria that you would be at 5 years into being in the agency before you even get in, you know. It's just that chicken and egg problem, you know.
Yeah, it's a bit like of course there's a strange tipping point with freelance work, especially media work, is that you're looking for work, chasing work, and then if it goes well, very quickly they come looking for you. And I think Blaine and myself are both back here, unfortunately, at the moment. I'm not going to lie.
Speak for yourself.
Blaine's a couple of steps ahead, because he lived in London, of course, you know. But there does come a tipping point when people are looking for you, and that's where you want to be. But when
we're told.
So we're told, we believe. But the big thing I'd say is when they come looking for you, you better be sure they're coming looking for you to do what you want to do. Like if you start making websites for somebody because it's easy to get into the industry, you'll find yourself making websites. You know
That's
what I mean?
exactly what I meant about, just 1 second, about the die-hard example of the best ACs in the world. Well, I mean, the particular example I gave where he was the son of somebody who did it before, of course, that's just a father-son thing. But most people, they start doing it like wanting to be a DOP or wanting to be a director or whatever. And they start at a low level, but suddenly they're an AC on like big TV shows, and you know, well, they're in this kind of cycle where they're kind of to anyone outside of the circle, they're like living the dream. You know, they're doing like exactly what any of us wants to do. But like the reality is so much different. Like, you know, there's so many of those people that I met that were inherently unhappy in what they were doing because they were creative people who had no creative output, and they had well paid jobs, and you know, they were inspiration to people around them, but like they were deeply unhappy themselves, and a lot of them had like, you know, 2 or 3 divorces and stuff. You know, it's like it's not a good way to live. It's exactly getting stuck in a rut. You can get stuck in a really good rut to people outside, you know, to an outside perspective. It can look really good and you're doing really well, but like unless you're doing what you want to do, if you're genuinely a creative, then that's you're never gonna be happy, you know.
I think there's a misconception that everybody in a film set is really creative. 3 or 4 people in a film set are creative, and most of that happens.
Well, ideally 3 or 4.
Ideally 3 or 4, yeah. Otherwise, it's the Muppet Show. But ideally, and a lot of that happens before you even get to set.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of misconceptions.
And that's about working different roles. Like I will try at least to be creative when I'm working as a DOP. But if I'm on set as an AC, I am very deliberately completely removed from the creative project. I will literally, most of the time, I won't care or look at what's in front of the camera. Like I'm just focused on how does the camera work. Is everything, you know, is the DOP. Well, yeah, if I'm focus pulling, it's different, obviously. But you know what I mean. As a second, say. You're just concerned with the technical side of things, and that's exactly what I mean about everybody specialising. You know, it's a machine, a well-oiled machine. Everybody has its place. You know.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know exactly what you like, and it's good to try everything, you know, and give it a go. And certainly, by all means, you learn a lot. My experience from the music world is I was a bass player in my band, and but I like to sing, I like to write songs, and I realised very quickly I was getting work for a bass player, because bass player is a bit like a sound guy. People need bass players and drummers. They get lots of work, but they don't generally form bands. And yeah, it just when the word goes out about you doing something, you know, it really should be what you want to do, you know. But I think that's true in a lot of industries as well. And you know, job descriptions are much more important than job titles. Job titles sound wonderful, but you know, what would you be doing for 8 or 10 hours a day, and do you like doing that? If you like cameras, you know, AC work is great. If you'd rather be acting and you're behind the camera, you're going to be very frustrated very quickly. Go back to acting school and just put up with bad wages for the first 6 years, you know. But it's true, like if you really want to do something, you will do it really well. And that's just...
And yeah, there's lots of roles as well in film, in particular, that you would, unless you all have experience working it, and I'm not like preaching down to you because maybe you know more about it than I do, but there's a lot of roles that you might not have imagined even exist, you know, and a lot of people, like nobody sets out to say be a script supervisor, for example. Like I've never heard anybody, you know, in college saying, that's what I want to do. But when they get there, that's like a continuity person basically. When they get there, you know, there's people who do that for a living, you know, and they love it. So they would have never discovered it unless they tried, or unless they were on set observing somebody else do it, you know.
Just maybe we'll throw a question or two out to the audience.
Yeah, but I think you had a question already, did you?
Oh, sorry, you did.
Yeah, it was kind of relevant there, but and you said something about London and Blaine, you worked in them. Would you ever, like, and your man Freddie who directed Stutters,
Ben, yeah.
got his funding from England anyway?
Yeah, yes.
BFI funding.
I'm not quite sure whether he got that for distribution and festivals after he made it, or whether he got it the whole way through. I honestly don't know. I know they definitely got behind him at some stage, yes.
Well, exactly, yeah. But would you ever consider moving over to England? Because the industry seems to be bigger over there.
Well, technically, I live in Poland at the moment, believe it or not. I spend about 2/3 of my time in Poland. My girlfriend's Polish, and I actually work here and then work remotely. So, would I go to England? Yes. As long as I don't leave the European Union, which is always possible, I would get an address in England and apply for funding in England and use Blaine's connections.
There's the plan.
You can be a lot of places at once. I know I sound like a tax exile.
I don't like. I lived in London for 2 years and realised that I could be living here and not spending so much money on rent and everything. To be honest, there's certain jobs I was getting over there, like a day here or 2 days there for like 150 a day or whatever, which is like €200. But like, you know, you get like 2 of those every 2 weeks, and sure, it barely cover. You wouldn't cover living like. So I would definitely say do it for all kinds of reasons, experience and everything, but for me, I'm a real home bird anyway. I was always going to come home. So I had no long-term plan. I wanted to go and make connections, get a bit of work, but like the likes of work where you do, like I love to travel, and I've done a lot of traveling with work. Like I shot in Norway there in January. I've shot in Tanzania twice, different places. Going back hopefully this year to Tanzania again. But like those kind of jobs, you'll get through people you know, and okay, it's good to go, say, to London to meet people and get into the circle. But once you're there, you know, everything is done. Like if I was in London, I'd be communicating 90% through email and phone call with people anyway. So you can do that from anywhere. There comes a point where you have to have a sit down meeting, but like it's only £100 in return flight. Like it's worth it if you already got the gig, or if you're very close to getting the gig, you know.
Well, like for me, I didn't plan to move to Poland, and sorry, I'll just be 1 second. But it works out probably the same as renting in Dublin, between the Ryanair flights and renting in Poland. That's just a bit of a fluke that wasn't planned. But you know, like be open to things. Like to some extent, Blaine's saying go to London for a year, but don't live there. That's kind of what he's sort of. I think it's really important that you do meet people. I do think so.
Yeah, absolutely. The 2 years I did in London laid the groundwork to allow me to live here and go back and forth all the time. Like I'm going back for a screening on the 10th of April, I think, for a film I shot there ages ago, and it's kind of just it's purely an excuse for me to go over and have a beer with a few people that I know, just to keep in touch and remain on their radar, you know. Because the thing is, I might only get one job, say, in a 2-month window, but that job could be worth 1/6 of the average person's salary, if you know what I mean. Like you over the year you might earn a half decent salary, but that same year you could not get a job in 3 months, you know. It kind of just averages out. So the point is that it's worth, I suppose, putting in a bit of legwork to get the jobs, because they pay off well when you get them, you know.
Sorry, you had a question?
No, it's just all the opportunities you can afford of being able to travel all over the world and that.
That's Blaine, not me.
Yes, Blaine. That's just kind of happened. That's just part and parcel of the job, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. I mean, I haven't been that many places, I suppose, and kind of make myself sound great. But the thing is, there's been a couple of things that happened for me that worked out well in that sense. Like one was starting to work with that company I mentioned before, Ecstasy, because just kind of out of luck really, they did a few gigs that required them to travel, and I was quite enthusiastic, and I had worked with them on really small corporate gigs in London, so they knew me and I got on well with them and stuff. And they knew as well that I could assist and shoot, which for them was useful because they work with very small crews. So that kind of, I think with them I went to Iceland and Barcelona and a few other places, I think, and a few different places in the UK as well that I wouldn't have went to otherwise. And it's good as well, those kind of gigs, like, because you get paid for a day's travel, and you get paid, you get put up in hotels and stuff. It's very comfortable work, like when it's corporate stuff. So yeah, that worked out well. And then going to Tanzania was with an NGO in Drogheda called Development Perspectives, and hopefully if I'm going again this year, there's kind of a project in the pipeline that hasn't got the funding yet, usual story, but we're hopeful, which would be going to Tanzania and Uganda this year. So that's this again, the foot in the door at some point, and a few projects will come out of it, as opposed to just being lucky with applying to something.
It's just to give a kind of a follow on from that. I do a lot of gimbal camera operating for a guy, Aerial Photography Ireland, Keith Smith, and the reason I met him because I was doing another job and we contracted in him to do aerial work, and his gimbal operator wasn't there, so I basically I said, well, I'm a cameraman, I can operate the camera, and I've got about maybe 10 or 12 jobs out of it since. The old saying, it's about who you know, or it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think it's much more about who knows you and knows what you're capable of. One little thing I did an internship when I was in DCU here, and I won't name the company. They're not in business anymore, not to do with me. But I turned up, and literally, I think I was in first year, maybe just going into second year, and they put me in front of the computer, and I realised I was swimming well out of my depth. They put me in front of Adobe Illustrator, and I was learning how to use the most basic tools, and it really kind of stuck with me, and I said, look, that's not going to happen to me again. If I land somewhere, I'm going to know what to do. If I hit the beach, I'm going to be prepared. So that's kind of, it's literally be prepared as best you can. Whatever you want to do, if you want to be an AC, know your lenses. If you want to be a sound guy, know your 717 mics from your 415s. Or if you want to be an editor, know your whatever. And I just say, because then when you do get that chance and you're working with somebody and they'll turn around and they only wanted an AC or they wanted one job description, but the fact you've multimedia, you're a useful person to have around, you're a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And Blaine said it there, if you're easy to get on with, you'll go a lot further than being good at your job.
Yeah, true. People hire who they like, they don't hire who's best at the job. Especially in corporate world, because they're just people who don't really care about the end product that much. To be honest, generally speaking, they don't really care if the film's going to be amazing or whatever. They just want to, have the crack and get paid to do it.
Is my boss happy at the end of the day? That's what the corporate person says.
Like a lot of those jobs with the company in London, I mentioned Ecstasy, like the one in Barcelona, we were covering a corporate, like an internal corporate event, which was actually the event that they had shot the thing in Iceland for. And like, honestly, it was the most, like, we had like 2 hours a day, I think we had to cover keynote speeches, and that was literally just for pressing record on a camera, very similar to this, static cameras covering somebody standing at podium. And
to be fair, now Will's doing a great job.
Oh, he was doing a fantastic job.
I mean,
he's doing a better job.
You're really talking down the road.
A better job than I did at the time, I'm sure. And the rest of the time we just spent hanging out in the hotel and like looking around Barcelona. Like, I mean, this is kind of, I was like, this is the dream. But like, creatively not so much. Point is, like, there's money in certain areas, and if you can tap into that, it's great to be able to support the more creative side of things that invariably aren't as well paid. So there's always that balance between trying to feed your creativity with your own projects and with other people's projects that you actually care about, and then just making a living.
The golden egg, if it were, is to kind of get paid to do something that you're creative on. I think everybody would love that, and it is possible, but it's rare. It is quite rare.
Well, it's not even as rare, but it takes a long time to get there.
Yeah.
Like in my case, that's definitely, my end goal is to work as a DOP on projects that I really am creatively, emotionally invested in.
Just on that note, do you want to maybe describe what your input maybe in Fat Freddie was, maybe to keep you guys awake? Because you did have a lot of input in sort of choices of I had some ideas for camera design, and actually what I'll do is 1 second, I'll just pass this around for reference.
Well, and just and that, like, it's just the same as any other film. The director tells you what he wants to do, and you kind of go away, think about it, and come back with some ideas about what.
These are just some storyboards that I had. You can pass that around there, and the reason being, I didn't storyboard the entire film, and I storyboarded some things. There's nothing in there I don't think that you shouldn't be reading, so you can flick through. This is what I had and what I kind of came to Blaine, and some of it made it into the film, some of it didn't. Some of it we had to mush together. But Blaine had some great ideas, and that was an example, I think, of you getting quite a large input for a DOP. Would you think so?
Yeah, well, for sure. Like the director DOP relationship changes depending on the director, like, all the time. So there's some directors, like there's another director that I work with a lot. His name's Bertie Brosnan, and like he's a bit nuts at the best of times. I don't mind saying that on camera, but like it's a really great creative relationship, because it allows we kind of push each other creatively to do something like totally beyond what you would do with anyone else. And we have a history of working together on a few projects where I would be heavily involved in pre-production, right from before the script is finished, right way through, which probably Alan is the only exception, but anyone else I don't really have that kind of relationship with, because it's not practical to spend like 6 months working on a film as a DOP, in advance of it being shot. Usually you'll come in like a few weeks before, and I suppose at that point you become very quickly involved, but you're not there from the start. So you're always given something to work with. And I'm useless at coming up with ideas, concepts, but I'm good at adding to ideas that are already there. And that's kind of one of the reasons, I suppose, why I found myself as a DOP. So the script is a great starting point. If you just I can visualize the words, I can visualize the scenes, and a lot of the time, depending on the director, depending how visually orientated the director is, that might be easier with some directors and not so easy with others. Like a lot of the time, you'll describe something to some directors and they won't have a clue what you're talking about. We shoot with 50mm over there in a medium shot and with this and that in the background, this kind of composition, and they'll be just like looking at you like, what? So you just draw it out in a storyboard and okay, well, yeah, cool. But like most DOPs or most directors who know you and know how you work, like you could just arrive on set and not even talk about it, and just like once you've read the script in advance, you can talk it out on the day. And once you kind of establish a few ground rules, like for this character it's always such and such a lens and so on, then half the job is already done before you get there. It's just a matter about technically carrying it out.
For me personally, and having been contracted in to do so much work, where on one end of the scale you're given carte blanche, on the other end of the scale, no like this, no tilted, over the shoulder interference. I really enjoyed working on this film because I gave everybody their 20 or 30% leeway to come up with stuff. Blaine was probably closer to 50 because of practicalities. But I think personally it was a real joy to work with people that were good, and we're really happy to have that freedom, because they don't usually have it in their day jobs with the corporate world or the sticky clients. And like everything from the sound guys to the sound mixers to the color gradists. Like I said, look, and the music was all originally it was composed by two guys that I know, and I gave them sort of some guidance. I said something a bit kind of Tom Waitsy, sort of little bit sort of banging on pipes, and then maybe something, I don't know, a little bit lo-fi, and they came back with the music. One song I kind of threw back at them and said, look, it's good, but it's just too bouncy, bring it down a bit. And they came back, and that was the football scene, and that's kind of how we got the music, and I'm really happy with it. And so I think working with people in that environment, having been contracted in all the time, you appreciate to be on the other end when you're asking somebody, because if you do this long enough, eventually you'll be the one asking people to come in and do work. So it's really good to know how to respect people, because everyone has ideas, and some of them are better than yours, just because you're the director or producer. Some of them have really good ideas. So
yeah, and it's good to be very conscious of where your limitations are. I mean, like Alan has a lot of experience in music. I have zero, and like whenever I work as a composer, whenever I work as a director, and I'm working with a composer, I'll give them pretty much complete leeway. I might give them a few examples of what I think might work, but really I'm saying, just give me something that works, because I have no idea. And that's what with any directors. I don't think there's any directors out there who are really good at everything, because that just doesn't happen. It's not practical. Your brain kind of only works in certain ways. Different people's brains work in certain ways. Mine is purely visual. So when it comes to music, I definitely appreciate good music, but I have no idea how it gets there, how it gets made. It's a complete mystery to me. That's the way I want it to be. I have no interest in knowing, because it'll ruin the magic. So I think that there's a way of working with other collaborators and knowing where your limitations are as much as where your attributes are, or good attributes.
Because if you kind of use other people's strong points and don't let your ego or sense of self get in the way, you'll really produce far better results, I think, Just a hands up. Oh, sorry,
No, I was just going to say that I think a good director is somebody who's clever enough to get the right people around them. That's essentially what a good director is, because sure, you need to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and make sure the collaboration works at its core. And that's why film by its very nature is a sort of autorial system where like one guy or girl gets to decide everything. but really all they're doing is like coercing the other creative minds into the right direction. Really, like, you know, there's no such thing as a great film out there that didn't have you know, good cinematography, good music, good sound design, good production design, all those things, you know. So the real magic, especially when it comes to like you know, low budget short films, which maybe or maybe not all of you want to do and should probably do to get started, at least coming out of college, is that you know, try as much as possible to surround yourself by those kind of people, because that's what will make it a success, not necessarily you know, yourself, if you want to direct, that is, you know.
You know, it's just a throw it back out. Has anybody here ever shot any music videos or anything themselves, or what do you kind of? I'll go around the room, I think. Sorry, I'll start here and we'll work around. There is a band, and as I recently found out, there's a criminal called Fat Freddie in Dublin, which I wasn't aware of when we made this film.
Really topical.
2 years is a long time in Crimeland, in Gangland. So, well, I knew the fish got dropped. And then one day I was just listening, it goes, Fat Freddy's drop, and just the light bulb went off, and I said, the name is a familiar name, and a familiar name is a great thing to put on anything, because people think they know it from somewhere. And I'm sure the gentleman at the back who's into sales is well ahead of that, but if people know a name from something, like a band, or if you can take it, there's a band at the moment I call Nico, or there was a couple of years ago. Well, half the people are going to buy their records thinking it's Nico from the Velvet Underground. You know, it's a common thing. So Fat Freddy's Drop was a familiar name, and then of course the fish. Obviously, when you watch the film, you get it. So that was the idea for the name.
Just with regards to your script, how long did it take you to actually write it?
That's a good question. The script, and I think the hardest thing out of every single part that I've done through the whole process was writing the script. And it is, I still think it is. It's only black and white words on page, but if you get that right, you're well on your way. And I think I did about 8 drafts. Would have sent them around to a couple of trusted people, not Blaine. But I did do the same thing with Blaine with the edit, but that's a different thing. And I kind of said, you know, so it's good to ask different people different things. I'd say about 2 to 3 months, 2 months, 2 to 3 months. Kind of locked it before Christmas and did a re-edit in January, February, and we shot then in March. So I had the concept, but the first draft was 20 pages, and there was a neighbour, and there was a little bit more going on. And then once we finished the film, we watched the first rough cut, I went, oh no, this doesn't tie together well, because we hadn't shot the pickup shots. And I had ideas of writing additional scenes. There's one line of dialogue when the girl says, you can go down the fish, that river that drain flows to the river. You might see your fish again. And the reason was there was a whole bit of dialogue there, but they're all going down to the river, which got cut from the film. And that's why she said that. And of course, you don't really notice it. And if you stop and think, you go, what's that got to do with anything? But the point was they're all heading down to the river. So I had one plan of rewriting the whole scene and going and shooting that, which would have been completely bonkers and wouldn't have added anything. But that was just a panic that I did with writing the script. So 3 months is the answer. I think there's about draft 8 that we filmed, and it went through about 5 or 6 edits in post to get it to where it is now. So, you know,
I don't think there's any sort of rule of thumb when it comes to script writing length time. I mean, I personally, I've written very few things, and most of the reason for that is because it takes me so long to write anything. Like the first film I directed, it took me like a year to write it, and I was deliberately trying to write it as fast as possible, and it was useless in the end. So, you know, but like some people, I mean, who was it? Yeah, the guy who I worked with in London, who I shot 2 of the films that he wrote. He writes a script in literally like a couple of hours, and they're really good. So, I mean, you know, you just kind of, when you hear that, you just like, right, just give up. But you know, it's kind of it's the kind of thing that you just can't, like, you can say that it's what's a ridiculous amount of shooting time or what's too little shooting time, and you can't apply that to script writing. I don't think. Depends on the writer.
I would say I did a lot of work on story. I read a lot of books on story, archetypes and story. There's a lot of things that I drew upon to try and add a bit of underlying sort of structure to what's going on story-wise. There's the 7 plots. I don't know, it's a really thick book you can get. The seven plots, and it's I should know this offhand. There's another one called Stealing Fire from the Gods, which I read. It's quite hard to follow, but it's all about the story cycles and the different types of ones, and the up story, which is the positive one, and then there's the tragedy, which is the downside. So then I did a lot of work on sort of the theory of myths and story, read a lot of books, and then didn't sit there with the book going, oh, now he has to go and chase the sword of light or meet the dragon. But I kind of subconsciously would have fed into how it works. And a good story works that way because you have, for me anyway, I think it catches people because it's, as Blaine said, it's universal. There's universal themes, and that's because, I tried to do that. There was a lot of sort of conscious or subconscious work gone into that.
If you're into script writing, you should read Save the Cat as well. It's a very well-known book about kind of commercial feature film writing by a major Hollywood scriptwriter.
Sid Field, is it? I think
no,
it's Sid Field.
It's not him. I don't know
Isn't
what his
it?
name is. I can't remember. But anyway, it's a good one. It's not very long.
There's another one, Selling Your Script, by Michael Haugh, Haugh, which is very good. Script writing, if you're serious about being a writer-director, even if you don't like writing and you're not good at it, I think if you're going to be a director, you need to really understand scripts. And again, understand maybe if your limitation in script writing, and work with a script writer. Some people are just naturally inclined towards writing, and it's very hard to do. It's really hard to get it right and to keep it concise. So, and then of course there's the practical aspects of the form, and write what you see, not what you think, and all that sort of business. But story structure is really important. And I think that film is about as sparse as it could be. There's a lot of stuff was done, a lot of backstory. Hopefully you got the backstory of the film without me having to say it. The family are moving house. It hasn't been happy roses. And again, that was how do I tell this without saying it? The character is saying, we've had to move house because your dad has lost his job. That was in the first draft. And that gradually got whittled out. And so we had a for sale sign in the garden. And then we had, they're not wearing great clothes. The kitchen's bare. They're moving into a house. All this sort of was where you're telling the story with production design and costume.
So
and
they were letting as well.
Yeah, to let, exactly, well spotted. They're letting, and I mean, what sort of family is renting a house and, something's gone wrong. Exactly, so well spotted. And again, this was when you get to draft 8. You've got your story, but how do you tell it better? And that's kind of, which is, honestly, looking at this now, I'm kind of terrified of having to go and do another one because I just see how much work was involved in it. I'm going, Jesus. But again, it's easier when you have people around you, and maybe if you have a little bit of a budget or something. I'm dying to do it again, but maybe I'll take a holiday first. Any other questions or anything?
Actually, how did you get picked up by RTE?
Good question. I could be really smug and say I made a good film. That's not true. I worked very hard on the press kit and the promotion, and I have it all up in Dropbox and all ready to go. And that's where multimedia degree really comes in useful, because you have your photographs, you have your logos, you have your everything done, ready to go. You have your blurbs, your synopsis is all written. I emailed a very nice email letter. Practice your email writing, it's very important. To Stuart, or is it Shane Duggan? Stuart or Shane Duggan, I forget who basically is the guy that moderates what goes on Shortscreen. How did I find this out? I went on the film forums, like Filmmakers Ireland, or the Facebook forums, and I said, hi guys, does anybody know how to get, PM me if you know how to contact someone in RTE. This was about December last. Someone sent me his email address. I wrote an email and said, this is my short film. We got into Galway Film Festival last year, highlighted, and here's the link on Vimeo, private password. This is the Dropbox link to the press kit. Hope to hear from you soon. Pretty to the point, on the stage, off the stage. And then he came back in January, literally about 8 weeks later, and just said, Alan, I like your film. I'm going to try and get it on Shortscreen, but I can't promise anything. And that was it. So, when you push yourself over the hill, have everything prepared. And that's where the 12 months in between went, of typing up all. It's a slow job getting your logos and your graphics and your websites and your SEO done and all that sort of business. And that's what people don't see, and that's where multimedia degree comes in really useful. So I wanted to talk about that more, but again, I think I've talked about it. So. But that's the answer. I found the email through the blog, through the forum, contacted him, had everything lined up, all the ducks lined up, ready to go. And then, most importantly, he liked the film. If he doesn't, yeah.
All the extra, you were saying all the extra, like the publicity and the logo
Yeah.
and that in the Dropbox, like that's not something we would learn in the degree. Is that just something you learn?
Yeah, I've just learned over. Make other people's job as easy as possible. That's a very important thing. They are busy people. I mean, I've done every single technical part of this film. I'm up to speed with it, including burning DVDs and DCPs, digital cinema packages, all this sort of business. And then for RTE, they said you have to send in the file on tape or something else. And I'm sort of going, right, you know, big organisations can be a little bit behind the curve. So I contacted them and said, look, what format do you need it in? And the general vibe I got off was, it's in the contract. But the contract was send in a HD 1080i50 file, which hopefully that means something to everybody here. And I said, that's great, but that's not a file, that's a codec. What container do you need it in? And I sent this to 2 or 3 people, and it was, what are you stupid, basically was the kind of the vibe I was getting back. And because I have Premiere there ready to export into 20 different formats, all I need send it into them. Basically, at the end of the day, you have to go through a finishing house that they recognise, production house, which because they pay you for the file, it's okay, because it's kind of, it's a cost out of the thing. But literally at the end of it, it was just send it to one of the production houses and stop wasting my time, which was the kind of vibe I was getting. And to be honest, I don't blame them. They're dead right. They're busy people, and for all the rigmarole and roundabouts I did of trying to figure out how to do this, I ended up just sending it through the production house in Windmill Lane, and it was grand. And they kept looking for a TX file, and I'm sure Will knows what a TX file is. I didn't know what a TX file was. Transmission file.
I've never heard that before.
Neither did I. And I'm there going, look, what's a TX file? But it's, little things like this. And, they were kind of, so that was kind of something I learned about broadcasting, that, they needed the bars for 1 minute and they needed the pre-roll. All easy stuff to do.
What's a transmission file?
It's the file that they receive that they upload onto their system.
It's just a file format.
It's just a file.
Container like MP3 or whatever.
And the thing is, I learned that people you're dealing with in the office, either through no fault of their own, they might not be technical people. And it doesn't mean they're any less or any more. It just means you have to respect. Don't make them look stupid. They don't like to look stupid.
But have they completely converted to digital?
Oh, they have, yeah. There's an option to send it in on beta tape, Betamax or something, or the Digibeta. There's an option to send it in, or else send the file. So basically, all the approved production houses, they QC it, which you could do yourself. You make sure it's broadcast safe. You make sure the audio is -23 LUFS LUFS, and you send it in. It's not hard to do, but they'll charge you €400 for it, and you have to go through them. So that was a little bit of a lesson. But look, that's the rules. They pay you for the file, so you're not coming out at a loss, But little things like that you learn along the way as you go, and I don't think you can learn that in college as such. You just have to make a fool of yourself once, and then So I've had a lot of people contacting me recently about that. Other filmmakers asking, what do you have to do, for broadcast? Because it is like the final frontier. Everything else is easy. Web, DVDs, Blu-rays, relatively speaking. But broadcast.
But there's also like the complication of like DCPs aren't that easy, depending on where you go, what they want.
They're getting easier now. Like a lot of software now can do them.
Premiere has inherent.
Premiere has it, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just the finishing deliverable format for festivals can be tricky sometimes. But like it again, like just surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. Like I have a great colorist, and he's a technical genius, and I just Facebook message him whenever something comes up, and he usually has the right answer. So it's kind of like you'll find that if you just you don't need to know everything, but you need to know somebody who knows it.
You need to know enough to know that they know enough. That makes sense. And obviously, being in multimedia or something related to it. I think to some extent it's good to know that, even if you're not the one actually transcoding it and doing that. So, but read between the lines. If an email says just send the file to the production house, just send the file to the production house.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's a good rule of thumb just dealing with anyone in the industry not to beat around the bush, just get to the point. There's kind of, in Ireland we have a habit of just kind of being super nice and polite about everything. Like that just doesn't fly internationally. Like in London, like it's just like what do you want? Give it to me, whatever whatever the reason is that you're getting in touch. Just that's all they want to hear, and it's not like they're being dicks or anything. They're just doing their job, and they don't see any reason why they should do anything different.
You know. Last summer to keep like whatever you're talking about in the email in the subject line, and that's it.
True.
Like,
People just read subject lines.
And they said, because the person I was working for, they're just like, I'm not going to read past the subject line.
Yeah, it's very true. Probably even in the space since I was in college, which isn't very long ago, the average inbox has gone from 50 a week to probably 50 to 200 a day. Unfortunately, and bigger companies, they email everybody and everything and CCing and BCCing. And it's probably going to be one of them sort of things that will reach a critical mass in the next few years, and you'll probably see everything, because people are already stressed out to the gills because of their inbox. And what's happening now is people, in all companies, not just media, they're just deleting their inbox. If it's important, they'll email me back. And that's what people are doing. So very often, and that's what a lot of people are doing. But look, I know there's no more questions. I don't want to keep you all. It's a lovely sunny day outside. Is there anything else any questions for Blaine?
You don't have to have
fashion tips, maybe.
But like, feel free to chat to us afterwards if you want. Like, you don't have to. We don't have to be all formally on camera and everything for having a chat.
It's going to be like the Late Late Show. We have a poster for everybody here in the audience. So there's one little caveat that you must
pay €10 each.
The film is available on the RTE player, and I'd really appreciate if everybody could tweet, Facebook, message it, because somebody asked me what happens in the future. Well, it all depends on how many people see the film, and I don't think one short film is going to launch a career unless you're Chair Cleary. The more people see it, the more people are aware of what you're doing. So please take the poster. If you can put it up somewhere, or even just keep it, or give it to someone that'll put it up, I'd really appreciate it. And anything else?
Thanks.
Thank you for listening.